So, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. I introduce you today to Patrick de Pauw, CEO of Social Cedar, a company he founded about 6 years. And Social Cedar is actually a combination between a platform and a methodology to boost employee engagement. It has partnerships with more than 250 companies all over the globe. And Patrick will share today some very interesting points of view on how employee engagement is essential for change management. Now, before I hand over the mic to Patrick, some practical points I want to address. If you want a bigger view on the slides, just double click on the presentation of Patrick and you will see them a little bit bigger than our images. And secondly, feel free to raise questions, make remarks in the chat during our presentations. Both Patrick and I love to interact with our audience during our speech, so feel free. If there comes up something interesting, I will interrupt Patrick and Patrick will interrupt me. So Patrick, over to you.
Thank you, Kirsten. Because I will do just the same afterwards. So I will have my first session and Kirsten will have the second session. The purpose obviously is that it's there's a chat, so you can ask all the questions in the chat and we will be very happy to answer all the questions. So indeed, today I'm going to talk about the 6 years of experience that we have in helping companies with employee engagement as part of their digital transformation, and you could also say as part of change management. I just have to see that my slides move. Voilà. Just to say that I'm not the youngest one on board. I come out of a completely different sector. I had my experience in travel and airline industries, and at the time I was born, that was in fact what was said being a computer. So you can imagine that it's a very old IBM, so it's from the 60s, and so I saw the digital growth in companies from nothing, because I even worked on telex a long time ago when I was ordering tickets for railway. And there's even people that don't know what the telex is. We grow from telex to what we see now, sessions like this. So this is Social Cedar again, 6 years ago, and the idea was to do something with the word of mouth, which is a very important asset we have as humans. Is we talk to each other, and if we talk to each other, we create impact. And now we can create that impact also on social media. And this is what Social Cedar is all about. Let me just give you a bit of my insight, so at least what I'm seeing in recent years. I call it yesterday. Yesterday, a company was a company. A company was nothing to do with your family. It's a place you had to go to, you had to dress up, and you had to work from 9 to 5, and the boss was the boss. I still remember that I also. My first job was also in a bank. It wasn't like the picture there, but the boss was really the boss. And my family life or my private life ended when I entered the door, and my private life started when I closed the door. Now this is completely different, obviously, because we take our job at home, we take it when we go on holiday, and basically our job is there all the time. Meaning that companies have to rethink about who they are, because they become part of your family. And specifically for young people, this is very important, because they will look specifically for values in companies and not so much anymore only the money that will count. And obviously, there's also, even with the COVID, there's still a war for talent. Specifically now, we even see more questions arise, more companies turning towards us with the questions: how can we look and have, or at least look for the right talent, specifically that digital talent, which is at this moment where companies are really looking for. So the point is that as a company or as an organization or as an NGO, or whatever, as a school, you have to stand out more than ever. Before, you could just, I would say, you could just do your business as usual, but you could have a business now. You have business, but you are very much in the spotlights because everybody can take a look at you. You have there's so many ways where they can look up who you are on LinkedIn, on Facebook, online through your website. And there's lots of comments if something goes wrong as well. So you have to stand out. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to succeed. And you cannot really compete on price neither, because when I was working in the travel industry, in the Belgian travel industry, I could try to spend a lot of money saying that New York is at $2.99, but there was always somebody who was at $2.98. So all the money I was investing was for nothing. So it's not the price which is important. And this is a bit how I see things evolving today. I call it the old way. In the old way, there was often, for big companies, somebody who is responsible for internal communications, somebody for external communications, and hopefully there was some connection with the audience. There was some relevancy with the audience. It wasn't always the case. I also had the occasion where we just printed advertisements in the newspaper, hoping that somebody would see it and hoping that somebody would pick it up. We didn't have any clue. And before, like I just said, there's often, I see Patrick's mic is off. Is my mic off? Because I see the comment coming in. No? No? Thank you. Then I just continue. There was obviously somebody who was responsible for internal communications, somebody who was responsible for external communications, and often these communications were completely different. But then recently things started to change. And now I'm talking about a couple of years ago until, let's say, before the crisis. We saw that there was already quite a lot of companies that are looking at aligning their internal communications with their external communications and aligning their communications with the audience, which is great because this makes you standing out. That's also the field where Social Seeder was active or is active in. What is the content which is so relevant, so authentic that you can bring it out and that people look at it and they like it. That is what makes you as a company stand out. But then after COVID, or at least during COVID and after COVID, we see that all this is becoming more and more aligned. I had even this week a discussion, a discussion with the Belgian railway company, and they are really aligning their internal communication with their external communication. What we say internally should be just the same as what we say externally. And if we say something, it should be so relevant that people pick it up and they like it or they don't like it, but at least you should touch your audience, otherwise you're just talking to nobody. So authenticity creates relevancy. And this is what we feel the last months is that companies are really looking for authenticity and trying to find out how can we bring this authenticity in our digital transformation towards the outside world so that people can hear what we stand for, because that's important. And I will come back to authenticity. Authenticity is not about creating the perfect movie. Authenticity, often we see that there's much more reaction on a small 25 seconds movie that is made by an iPhone than a movie that's made by complete film crew. People know exactly. They feel what is authentic and what isn't authentic. So you should really take care of that. So going back to the start, the reason why I started Social Seeder is that we found out during an inquiry that 92%, HubSpot, the source HubSpot, but the inquiry that I did in Belgium was 90% of the people were choosing for a travel company because it was recommended by friends and family. So I started to think like, but if everybody takes a choice because it's recommended by friends and family, why shouldn't I ask these people to recommend me proactively? But that was the reason. So, and worldwide, 92% of the people, they trust suggestions from family and friends. And this is a source, this is Nielsen research, they do it every 2 years. And this is the last one from last year. And you see that worldwide recommendations from people I know are the most trustworthy source you can have. Second one is consumer opinions posted online. That's why you still have the TripAdvisors that are out there. And then you see, I just took out online video ads just as an example. It counts for 36% of credibility. It's still there, but there's very low credibility, and it's at a very high cost as well. So we go up to recommendations from people I know, but how do you physically do this also in a digital world? It's not so easy, because you cannot just go and have a mic hanging in every single cafe and then trying to hear whether they talk well or bad about your company. So you have to find another way. And that's where, at least this is my definition, I say this is the 1% rule. In lots of companies, when I ask, and if the company is already busy with creating relevant content, and relevant content is everything which is not too commercial. It's about your values, it's corporate social responsibility, it's your history, it's your people, it's your culture, it's the events that you're doing. This is creating your culture of a company, and this is what is so interesting for the outside world. But often, when I go into big companies and I ask how many people proactively share this interesting content, then I receive the 1%, and that's why I call it the 1% rule. Hey, Patrick, we have out of 1,000 co-workers, we only have 1% of the co-workers that is actively sharing something. How can we change this? Because this obviously creates a big impact. So that's where we start in the process, and we call it the ambassador side of the story. So we're going to start working with, with the concept of an ambassador of your company or an ambassador of your organization. An ambassador is not the same as an influencer. An influencer is somebody who receives something in return for recommending you. An ambassador doesn't receive anything in return. He does it because he likes it genuinely. And there's, and I will show you later, there's lots of people that like what you're doing, or at least that should be the normal way. If nobody likes what you're doing, then you obviously you have a problem. But they do it on a voluntary basis, and still people do things on a voluntary basis. You don't have to pay people to do something. This is not the normal way of and specifically not with your co-workers and your employees. That's the biggest difference. So everybody joins on a voluntary basis, and they will only talk about your business. And the authenticity will make them talk about your business, but still they will do it on a voluntary basis. And now I'm going to share at least some insights, because all this is nice. Okay, yes, Patrick, we have to work with ambassadors, but what is effectively the impact of an ambassador? If somebody is posting or reposting something of your company on their social media networks, we will say it's the same, basically, what I'm talking about today is the same as what happens or happened before in your local cafe or in your canteen. Is when people talk relevant and they have something interesting to say, they will reach quite a lot of people. Well, online, if you ask somebody to spread your content on their social media, on average in Europe, you will reach about 317 people, which is a lot. So per post they're doing on social media, you will reach about 317 people. And the strange thing is that during COVID-19, it raised to 400. So meaning that apparently, if somebody shared a post, it was picked up even more than before. And I think it's also because the sense of belonging is greater than ever. People are working remote, but they still have a sense of belonging. They want to know what's going on in companies. They want to belong to something, because otherwise you're just working home and there's no connection. And people want to have connections. And this is a slide that I like to show a lot, because it says it all. If an organization shares content on social media saying, I have 1,000 followers in my Facebook and I post something as a company, the organic reach is very low. Here you still see the 3%. Often it's at this moment, often it's about 1%, so it's even lower than 3%. But suppose that you still have organic reach of 3%. That means that if I have 1,000 followers and I post something on my own company Facebook, there's only going to be 3% of the people that will see the piece of content. To reach the other ones, you have to pay. That's how social media, they get rich. So with 1,000 followers, you reach about 30 people. Now suppose that you have 10 ambassadors, which is not a lot, and you ask these 10 ambassadors to share something, and then there's again this red figure of 400 during the last 3 months. They will reach about 4,000 people in total. So with 10 ambassadors, you reach 4,000 people with 1,000 followers, and you do it as a company, you will reach 30 people. So this is really showing the gigantic effect that you have if you work with your ambassadors through networks like social media, which is part of the digital process of your company, or should be part of the digital process of your company. By the way, 98% of employees use social media every day, so they are somewhere always an influencer. Everybody, by the way, is an influencer. Everybody has as a network. So why don't you ask these people to share your content? And some other things that are interesting is brand messages are reshared 24 times more frequently when distributed by employees, meaning that if I share something as an individual, more people will pick up the content and they will even reshare it, and 24 times is a lot. But this is because basically the messages from companies are often not even reshared once. And content shared by employees gets more than 8 times more engagement. Engagement means the likes and the comments, so 8 times more comments, which is again logical because we are all human beings and we like to interact with human beings. We also like to interact with companies, but we like to interact 8 times more with humans, let's say like this. And leads developed. Yes?
Patrick, I have a very interesting question from the audience. Does the market really see the ambassadors as volunteers? Because many methodologies have that concept, but as someone that has it as part of their job for which they're being paid, the mandatory role ensuring that something happens because the person who's asking it really agrees with you, but does not really see how you get unpaid volunteers to really come over as voluntary and authentic, I think.
It's all, and there we should go a bit into detail about the methodology, because it is like this, that the 1% is what I just mentioned, is what is the logical way. So most of the people, they just stand aside and they don't do nothing, or they're afraid of the technology, and they don't know how to use the technology. So what we do in our approach is we have this methodology. First of all, there's a couple of things, and I will come back to that because this is a very important question, but there's some things that are really important when you want to have more people being engaged in a voluntary way. The first thing is show the example. I will come back to that later, but show the example as a management. And management in the digitalization of a company is a very important factor. If they don't come along, it will not work. Secondly, find your first power ambassadors. There's always this 1%. Find them first. It's like the first person that helps somebody who's falling in the street. There has to be a first person. Otherwise, everybody is just looking at it. Nobody does something. There has to be this first person. So you have to look for the first person. Then you will see that the rest will follow. And then another thing which is very important is make it simple. If you make something complex, people will not do it. Intranet. The reason why intranet doesn't work is because sometimes intranet is a very complex environment where people don't like to go to. And so if you ask people to do something, to look for content and then eventually to share, there's going to be very few people doing it. But if you make the process so simple, then people will do it. And then this little effort, they will do the little effort. They will. It's about doing the little thing that creates a big impact. So I hope that answers a bit of your question. I will, if there's any other questions, or Olivera, if you do not agree, please tell us. This is an open discussion, very open to discuss this with you. What we also see is that leads developed through employee social marketing convert up to 7 times more than other leads, so which are not unimportant. And the retention is 37% higher. Retention means if I become let's say a customer of AXA, because it's being recommended, there's 37% higher chance that I remain a customer because I've been recommended by somebody I know. But it's also a very important thing. So what have we seen during this crisis? Specifically also because lots of companies are really looking into the digital aspect. They had to look into the digital aspect because everybody was working remote. We had to start working on Zoom and all the other platforms. We see that the reach was going up by 26%, meaning that obviously more people were behind their screen or are behind their screen and react more. So you reach more people than ever before. And there's 10% more ambassador activity. So an ambassador has, in our platform, we see a certain activity. But last 3 months, the activity has increased tremendously. Why? Because again, like I said, people want to belong to, they want to belong to something. And if you're remote all the time, probably, and this is what explains the 10%, people are, they want to share a bit more than ever, even before, because that shows that they are interested in your organization. So again, this is why it's so important also these days to look at employee engagement. Now to make it very, very tangible, I just put some two slides very quickly, and I'm not going to explain what you see because this is part of the dashboard and it's not a commercial talk, and I don't want to talk about this today, but it's just about what effects can create ambassadors if you ask them to share things online. Now, this is, you see it underneath, a medium-sized B2B company. Medium-sized, they have about, you see it up on the top, they have about 1,098 ambassadors. So it's a good size company. They asked these ambassadors to share. It's a B2B company, it's also important. And they created 32,255 visits to their website, thanks to the efforts of their ambassadors. And they reached 1 million, 1.7 or almost 1.8 million people, again, thanks to the efforts of ambassadors. This is a huge figure, specifically for a B2B company. And this is all thanks to the digital knowledge, or make digital so simple that people embrace digital and that they spread your message. But also smaller companies, because this is a small size B2B company. You see on the top 92 co-workers. They created 8,603 visits to their website thanks to the efforts of ambassadors. And they reached about 208,000 people. Again, for a small size B2B company, this can count. And if you would look at what efforts and costs you would have to spend to create the same effect, it will be tremendous. But this is a bit going back to the question of Olivera, I think. What makes it a success, and what makes it, because you cannot make it mandatory. By the way, we have GDPR. We can never ask people to join an ambassador program, or to not ask people to join an ambassador. Just say you are an ambassador and you'll have to share something which is not compliant with GDPR, obviously, because social media is your private network. So you're obviously you're in control, full control of what you do on your private networks. It all starts with you. And then I have this little story from what we see from time to time in companies that are now in this process of embracing new technology. And I'm not going to say what company. It wasn't a company that you think it was, because this is an example of Deloitte Mini, but it wasn't Deloitte, so I don't, just for because I don't want to pinpoint Deloitte. But I was invited to a management board meeting because they wanted to know how come that the program didn't really work. So they were asking their co-workers to become ambassadors and to share content. And the content was relatively interesting, but it didn't happen. And I was asking, I went I went through the database, and I saw that nobody from management was ambassador. They didn't even apply. So they were asking all their co-workers to become ambassadors, but they didn't do nothing. They said, we are not on social media, we're not social media savvy. It's for the co-workers, not for us. And I was explaining, this is a bit what I was saying, like before, everybody could drive, your employees could drive a small car completely in the colors of your brand, but you as big bosses, you drive probably black, big BMW cars with no branding whatsoever. That's the old school. That doesn't work anymore. You have to show the example. And the example is basically this: the boss drives also in the colored cars because the boss is the boss of a company, and he should be proud to come out being the boss of that company. And showing proudness, you can do it through LinkedIn, for example. If you're young people, they look at LinkedIn profiles before they go and apply for a job. And if they see that the boss is a very, the profile of the boss doesn't fit what he thinks is interesting, he will not apply. Boss doesn't give the example, the rest will not follow. So you have to start giving the example as management. And this is one of the biggest learnings that we had during these 6 years. And just ending by the last slide, and then I think we can go into some questions and answers, and I can explain lots of other things if you want to. But there's one of the keys of success, and this is always with every single project, and I think that Kirsten will talk about that later as well, is how do you manage this and what methodology are you using so that you can really create the change you want to have. And again, not ending with the 1% of people that from time to time share something. And this is this methodology where you recruit, and when you recruit, you inform the people why they become an ambassador, what's in it for them. And for instance, and I can tell that one, for Toyota, for instance, we work for Toyota. And one of the reasons they said, what's in it for you as an ambassador? No, you don't get money in return. But the more you are on social media, the more you have a profile, the more connections you have, the more this will count for your professional life. So we are helping you creating a good profile that enables you to grow as a professional. Even if your future is outside Toyota, we don't care. We want to give you also these the platform so that you can share as much as you want on social media, and you create a big network. So you have to explain the why, you recruit the people, like I said, you start with the Pauw ambassadors, then you go throughout your company. Activation is the second part. You need to have the right content, obviously. If you have only commercial content, people will not share it. Even if you give them money at a certain moment, they will stop sharing it because social media, again, is like a cafe. If you talk rubbish at a certain moment, you don't have any friends anymore. So even if you give them money, they will stop doing it. So again, the message is very important. And not only the message, also the frequency. We've seen that the good frequency is one of the most important things that creates an impact. And again, it's aligned with the cafe. If you go to your local pub, normally you go, this is a long time ago, but you go once a week or twice a week, you go on the same days because then you meet the same people. Well, the same goes with the employee engagement program. So the frequency is very important, and also during summer. Some companies, they think that during summer, July, August, they don't need to do anything on social media. Well, that's wrong. Not everybody is on holiday, so you have to be active on social media. Engage is, like I said, what makes people engaged a long time. And again, this is not the money, but this is creating the concept of we are a community. And how do you create a community? I can talk about that a lot if people are interested. But it's not by creating a contest. Contests is the opposite of a community. In a community, everybody is the same. And in this, you create a community. So everybody should be the same, but that doesn't mean that you can give flowers or you can give them small attentions, but don't give them very expensive things, because then again, you're in a competition, and that's not the way to work on a strategic program. And obviously, the most important thing is learn. If you have content that is not picked up and is not relevant for your coworkers and is not relevant for your audience, stop making that content or adapt your content. You have to learn from the behavior of people. And if you learn from the behavior and you are able to adapt your content, you will create lots of impact. So I think, Kirsten, this is about a bit about my presentation. I see that there's Erika Hudson, sorry. Do you think there's a level of cynicism in the audience that doubts the personal testimony regarding a company and sees it as a plant?
I think isn't the audience that is receiving these testimonials very cynic about them? Don't they see that this might be like a setup instead of an authentic message?
We don't see that. There's, by the way, we had also, because we are working with quite a lot of banks, and I know that it's sometimes, let's say, there's some security issues. So one of the banks, they asked us, like, what if somebody becomes an ambassador and afterwards he posts these messages with negative comments, because then you become the opposite of an ambassador. Well, in our program, you can remove them, obviously, but the reality is we haven't seen that. In 6 years, we've never seen that. So apparently, if somebody becomes an ambassador, they are, in some reason, they are always, or not always, they are positive. And if they don't like the message, if they think that it's not authentic enough, they will for sure not post it. They will just not post it. And that's why you need to learn from the results. We see that everything that the messages that you are making, and if you use, for instance, stock pictures, there are far less people that are going to spread them because it's fake, or they look at it as fake. If you ask people to spread messages with lots of corporate identity, we are the best, we are the cheapest, big your logo, you will see that very few people will spread such messages, because it's like you're wearing a commercial t-shirt in your local pub, and lots of people, they don't want to do this. So it's all about authenticity, and the cynicism about authenticity is can only be when there's no real authenticity. I think if you're real authentic, you shouldn't have so much cynicism around the table. Are there any other questions? There's a possibility for questions afterwards as well, as far as I understand. So as I would suggest, Kirsten, that we move on, or do we need to have a small breathe?
For me, it's okay to move on. I'm looking at the chat.
Okay, I will look at the chat, so I will take over your job. And yeah. I'm very happy to introduce Kirsten Libbrecht from AXA Bank. She's a change manager. Previously, she was working for another bank, which is KBC. From there, she did some communication for schools and VZW's. I don't know in English.
Non-profits.
Non-profits, yes. So
yeah.
non-commercial organizations. But she did felt that she was she missed the commercial part, and so she became change manager of AXA Bank. And I'm very proud to introduce you, Kirsten.
Thank you, Patrick. The story I want to share today is actually the wild roller coaster ride my team and I experienced during the past months. At the moment, the quarantine measures concerning COVID-19 were implemented in Belgium. We were actually in the lead of a huge change project involving 1,600 people. And we had to reorientate all our plans to a full digital process. And for us, this put the entire philosophy of Adcar a little bit upside down. And I want to share that with you. Maybe first a little bit context on the company and my team and the project at hand. AXA Bank is actually a very small Belgian bank with about 860,000 customers. We differentiate ourselves through actually very happy clients. For example, our net promoter score is 29, where the net promoter score of an average Belgian bank is -3. We're also extremely proud to be chosen as best Belgian bank last year, and also as the bank with the best distribution network last year. What makes us very specific is that we work with independent agents who are their own boss, and they actually manage their own business. We have two main points of expertise in our bank. On one hand, we have the quite traditional mortgages for retail customers, and this is the base of our business. We yearly claim about 10% of the market, which is for such a small bank huge. On the other hand, we've recently invested in new expertise because the rates on
Kirsten,
mortgages are actually declining.
Kirsten,
Yeah.
some people say that they see that you're not on full screen. Is that possible? Because they see both.
Let me see. Am I now or
No.
not? No. Okay. I will present it to another screen. Yeah. Sorry for the technical hiccups. I need to change screens a little bit, and then it will.
Yes. That looks much better.
Yeah. Okay. So we were here, and I explained about traditional expertise we had in mortgages, but due to the declining interest rates on mortgages, we had to invest in new business, and we invested in the past years in acquiring investment plans with our customers. And in 2019, we increased the number of customers with an invest plan by 27%. So we're upcoming very much in that side of banking. Now, who's the change team? We do not only party, but it sets a little bit of an atmosphere of how we cooperate together. Now, 4 years ago, I started actually as project manager for the IT department of AXA Bank. And at that time, change management nor the Adcar methodology were widely spread. it was actually not common to invest a substantial amount of project resources in the human side of the change. And I considered myself very lucky to get the opportunity to experiment with the concept. And over the years, it evolved from a one-person mission to a full-blown team of 3 versatile change experts. And what do? We actually plan and execute the change plans for a selection of the company's projects ourselves. And on the other hand, we are available to provide advice and coaching to those colleagues who want to apply change management in their projects. Now, first and foremost, we approach every change endeavor as a project. It gives us the necessary structure. For example, this year we accompanied this project with about 1,600 people. And I was very happy with my background as project manager when COVID-19 made us change all plans completely. In an instant, I had an overview of the impact of a full digital way of working would have on the change plans we already had in place. And on top of that, this project-based approach gets us the commitment of senior management by defining measurable goals, proactively mitigating risks, presenting timelines and status reports. We relieve change management a bit of its fluffy image and guarantee management that the money they spend is spent well. And of course, we use ADKAR in every project. I think this methodology is far out the best way to capture all aspects of the change process. Now, what was the project about?
Kirsten, can I ask you a question? What is please, because I don't know that term.
I will explain a little bit later. You will see the philosophy, and I will go into that a little bit more. So the project at hand, our company released a new tool for credit applications, and the preparations for this project already started in 2013, and we released as planned on June 15th, a few weeks ago. And if you paid attention on my context about the company, credits are the core of our company. So the change really touched the heart of our bank. It involved a huge amount of people, and our task was to get everybody able to work smoothly with this new tool. And for a lot of people, it changed their jobs completely. Now, why was this change necessary? As I already told you, our clients are in general very happy with us, and our research shows also that they are very happy when they applicate for a loan at AXA Bank. Research shows that their positive feedback really concerns the service, the friendliness, the expertise of our independent agents and their employees. These people simply go out of their way to give you transparent information and good service. So that's an element we want to keep because that's our added value. We make the difference with personal service. But our clients are not very often unhappy, but when they are, their negative feedback concerns long processing times and a lack of transparency during the process. And I really understand that point of view. Today, if you order a simple dress online for about 50 euros, you know where that dress is at every step of the way from the company towards your closet. You get messages every day about your dress just left the storage and is on its way to you, or a driver is on his way to your house. Please make sure someone's there to receive the package. But when you apply for one of the biggest purchases in your life, a house for a few €100,000, the entire process is a black box, and we understand people find that unacceptable. So we were very much in need of a new tool that on one side automated the process so it would go much quicker, and on the other hand that enabled transparency to our clients.
I have a question from Erika. The question is, were you internal focused or to the customer base?
We were internally focused because first we released the tool to our internal employees and the agents, and in half a year we will also introduce it to the clients, because then they can start intervening in the process from their homes, from the mobile app or from their home computer. They can say, I want to make a simulation for myself. I want to upload some missing documents. Even I want some online advice. Those things will be possible in 6 months, but this release was only focused on the internal audience. I hope that covers the question. Okay, so that's about the context what we were working in, and I want to go a little bit deeper into the change plans that we made. Now, before we start making plans for any project, we really take the time to study the impacted audiences thoroughly. We do this through workshops with representatives of diverse involved stakeholders. Now, after a few years in the company, we practically already know who they are and who might be in the best position to represent them, but which messages will hit mark? What media best to use? What are possible points of resistance? What's their history concerning the project? That's something that differs every time. So we try to set up a well-considered segmentation of the impacted audience, and that idea that we will not be treating everybody equal first encounters a lot of resistance. But when you try to accompany 1,600 people through a change with limited resources, you have to acknowledge that they're not all impacted at the same way. It's quite logical that you have to develop different plans to fit different needs. So we split our audiences up according to the impact of the project on their job, for instance, high, medium, or low. Their attitude towards the change, positive, neutral, or negative, their geographical position, for instance, are they in the head office? Are they in the independent agencies? Because that makes also a very big difference in terms of how reachable are they for us. And their status in terms of production. And that's an eye opener for us, because our study of the production of 2019 made very clear that actually a quarter of our agencies are responsible for 56% of our production. And it's actually a law. We we applied this philosophy to a lot of different productions of a lot of different projects, and it's the same everywhere. There is a very small part of our people in the network responsible for a huge part of the production. And it's quite logical that we need to treat these people differently than the 37% that's responsible for 9% of the credit production. We will not ignore those basics, but the focus will be different, and the coaching will not be so intensive and so personal as it will be for the VIPs who are responsible for a much bigger amount of the production. So that's a first thing we introduce in a project, that is that we need to segment our audiences. And then we make a plan for each step of the change. And there we use the ADKAR methodology. And ADKAR stands for the 5 phases in change that everybody personally goes through to make a change successfully implemented. So the first phase is awareness, where you need to make clear that what is going to change for you and why is it changing. People need to know what's changing and why before they can choose to participate in the change. Things that will help there is a very good communication plan, sponsor involvement. Then you have the desire part of the change that says that people need to make a personal choice to engage themselves into the change before they can acquire knowledge on what do they need to know to function in the future situation. And I find desire traditionally a very difficult phase. But the ADKAR methodology is very adamant about the fact that you need to involve your sponsor. You need to set up a support plan for the people who have an influence on your target audience, and you proactively need to manage resistance. Then there's the knowledge part, and that's a very classic part. Everybody wants to focus on training. Most of the time, people try to solve awareness and desire with training, but actually that will not work. Training is necessary to get knowledge and maybe some ability, but it will not help in all other phases. The phase about ability is it's not because you have a theoretical driver's license and you know in your head how a car needs to drive that you can actually drive the car. So in this phase, we focus on obstacle handling. And in the project that we're discussing today, we're actually in that phase. Annabelle, who's also in the call, can acknowledge that we're very much into ability at the moment. And to get closure, there's a reinforcement phase where you celebrate the successes and take action on those points that need improvement. So each phase of the change requires different actions, and we develop action plans for each different segment of the audience. So you can expect that this was huge. We had 1,600 people, about 12 different segments, 6 plans for each segment. So it was quite a big project for us. Now, as I go into detail of each plan a little bit more in the coming slides, you will see that we had a lot depending on this one event. For our independent agents, we call it the credit day. It would be an event that unified all different phases of the change process in one big gathering between head office and the network. There would be high-level demos and inspiring TED Talks to raise awareness, and interactive sessions to discuss the change, and a lot of food and drinks to digest it. And in our experience, food and drinks really work to raise desire. And even the first hints towards knowledge would be made during this event. And you see, we had a lot. We were betting a lot on this one horse, not the only horse, because we had several parallel actions in place, but this was a big one we were betting on. This event was planned for the beginning of May, and then came Corona. And as Patrick told me, we need to be authentic. Well, this is an authentic image of our working situation and mood at that moment. Most of our team members have small children in the house, so it was pretty chaotic. On the left is actually my daughter every day in my space, trying to distract me from what I'm doing. And in the beginning of March, we were actually in the middle of our preparations when the government announced the necessary quarantine measures. And AXA Bank quickly decided that everybody had to work from home for an unlimited period of time, and all planned events would be cancelled until the end of the summer holidays. So these measures were announced on March 13th, and we said, keep calm, don't panic, we need to change everything. We were validating our new plans at the steering committee of the project by the end of that month. So in 2 weeks' time, we turned everything completely around. If you see what we had planned initially on awareness, we've foreseen about 5 to 7 different ways to raise awareness by different media. We had a topic on the annual company event, we had dedicated department meetings, but we also tried different ways of getting the message across, like inviting a CEO of the #1 shoe retailer in Belgium on how he introduced a similar project in his company. We also tried to introduce humor a little bit, like making references to popular TV shows on the office screens, and those things we had to cancel completely. On the other hand, most activities on awareness we could install in a different way. For example, we planned an inspiring TED Talk by our sponsor at the credit event. We gave him a camera and asked him to make a home video on his vision about the project. And the screen quality was not very great, and he was very reluctant to share images of his living room, but people really received it very well. And we really believe that makes a difference in getting the reason why you need to change across if a sponsor is really committed to it. Then for the part of desire. In my beginning years in change management, I really struggled with this pillar of change management. I asked myself, how the hell do you get someone enthusiastic for a change that might endanger their job? And I found it difficult because it deals with emotion, and emotion is something we tend to avoid. So I'm pretty proud to say that as a team, we developed a very strong technique to cover desire of our audiences. We applied a theory of Atkar that says you need to identify resistance as early as possible and mitigate it like it are risks in a project. And we apply it in our hopes and fears workshops. It's actually quite simple. We provide people the opportunity to ventilate their hopes and fears in a safe setting. And simply getting the chance to talk about your concerns and having someone sincerely listen to them makes a major difference. It's also, I think it is related to the authenticity Patrick talked about. If you're really authentically listening to people and caring about their fears, it helps them along the way in the change process. Moreover, on the other side, these workshops give us an extensive view on the specific points of resistance to address before people are willing to participate in the change. And as you see, we performed extensive workshops with the highly impacted teams at head office before the COVID-19 measures hit us. And we identified a top 3 of their fears, and actually they're not that big of a deal because we could have predicted these things beforehand. At first, people are afraid they are not able to work with the new tool due to lack of a good training and time to practice with the tool. Secondly, they were very much afraid that the agents were going to express their anger towards the internal employees about the change, and they would not know how to handle it because that's pretty hard to counter if you're going through a change yourself. And thirdly, people were afraid to lose their job or that their job content would change in a bad way. And it's quite logic for us to counter these resistances with very specific actions. So that's why we really love working with hopes and fears sessions, because it gives us all the tools we need to cover resistance.
I have a question. This is a bit what we see happening as well, but do you have the impression that in AXA, people were even more open to embrace digital change during COVID? Because COVID is also, everybody knows that there's going to be big changes. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, for some changes, they were much more open. Like the decision we had to work from home was quite a logical one. You will see a little bit further in my presentation that some resistances against digital tools just disappeared overnight because there was no other way to work together on this topic than through new digital tools. So we noticed that the speed of acceptance of new tools to get them on the way really helped. But on the other hand, we noticed that because this was a full digital process, we did not quite capture everybody's emotions into the essence, which delayed their change process for this tool. And I will elaborate a little bit more on. We did these hopes and fears with the internal teams, but COVID-19 made us skip hopes and fear sessions with our independent agents because we were so busy turning around our plans that we did not have time or room left to think about creative ways on how to handle emotion in a digital way. And it's still something we're struggling with. How do you cover emotion and soft skills in a digital setting, in a setting where you cannot see each other face to face, because we are very much used to countering emotion with face to face things. So that's quite a challenge still for us. We did one small thing towards our audiences, but I think almost every company or project in the world came up with the same idea. Let's send something to their homes. So we made like a little emergency package that would fit through the letterbox, and we send it out to all people involved with a little note from the project team, telling them like, hey, we would have loved to see things differently, but we are still here for you during the release of this tool. Just hang in there. And it made a little difference, but because a lot of people had the same idea, it was not that a major impact to get them moving on in terms of desire. Now, the change team acquired the necessary skills in-house to develop digital training content. We were already experimenting with e-learnings in 2016. And these skills were not present in-house in AXA Bank, so we developed a close partnership with an external vendor to teach us all about blended learning, writing storylines for e-learnings, working with Adobe Captivate and an articulate storyline. How can you make good screenshots for an e-learning module? It's not our intention to become a training team, but these skills proved to be very necessary when COVID-19 made us transfer all planned training sessions into digital formats. We had the expertise in-house to just do that. So instead of a blended training format tailor-made for each segment, we had to transform all training content to digital formats. So we had digital live sessions, digital deep dives, and still a lot of e-learning incorporated in the training path. When we came to the phase of ability, we have actually the mentality of being very close to the people in the front line. We just do not stand by idly when things need to get done. So when the contact center needs help, we're there. When a central mailbox needs to be managed, we are there. We organize a daily war room to unify all stakeholders where issues can be raised and discussed. And we are with you in the line of fire. And in normal circumstances, we do it physically. We sit next to the contact center. We sit next to the project team. And in these circumstances, we do a full digital after go live support. But still, the emotional part of things proved to be a little bit more difficult. Now, we're now at this moment 3 weeks after release, and we have some preliminary lessons learned. Like we had nothing in place to digitally interact with the independent agents. We had no Skype, no MS Teams, no Zoom, nothing. And we had to speed up on the spot the implementation of Microsoft Teams for 1,000 employees. And that turned out to be a project on its own. It was very good that the crisis sped up willingness and ability to implement those things. We were very volatile on it, but it was a huge amount of work to get this done. On the other hand, we were very happy, as you said, Patrick. Years of resistance against blended learning, digital meetings, they disappeared in seconds. We had um, teams in-house that had a very classical view on how to train people. You put them in front of you in a classroom and you explain things on a screen. And we already knew for a long time that that was not the most effective way to train certain matters. And in COVID-19, this resistance just disappeared overnight in a blink of an eye, and it made us do incredible things together. Now,
Kirsten,
because we had to
I
train,
have a
yes.
question from Margarida. She asked, how
Mhm.
did you overcome the limited face-to-face support?
Well, um, we were very lucky that we already had invested a lot in the people who were in the front line. We have a very strong cooperation with the contact center for years. We have a very strong cooperation with the trainers for years and with the go-to-market department. So we quickly formed like one team going for it, and we were very much aligned on where to go. And that's actually one of the major lessons I learned, is that they we introduced a lot of new things, working with MS Teams, giving digital training sessions, and we hired expert consultants to train people in how to give digital training. We installed masters of ceremony to assist our trainers, but actually, in the end, they said to me that the most difference was the fact that we were there. Um, the guy in the left of my picture, he said to me after his first session, I was so happy you were there. You were calm. I knew that when something would go wrong, you would be there to solve things. And it gave me the guts to go for it. And actually, that sums up what the added value is. You are there when they need to take a leap of faith. They have to jump into the unknown, and you're there right beside them. And sometimes you need to make a presentation for them. Sometimes you just need to sit next to them when they do it, just to give them the courage to go for it. So, yeah, just being there made the difference. I think Annabelle, my colleague, can confirm that it's a miracle that if you stand by someone's side, they can do the biggest things ever. What we also did was, we sent this support package, and for some of the team members, I wrote a personal message. And afterwards, they said to me that that message made like a world of difference for them, because there was someone seeing them, someone acknowledging that they were going out of their way to get things done. So those were the things that made the biggest difference, the small gestures that you could never foresee beforehand that would make such a big difference.
Question,
Um,
Kirsten, because apparently there's quite a lot of interest from Yanis Kanautos. Did you experience an overlap with the project management tasks and responsibilities?
no, because actually in our company, the IT project is a separate project from the change project. So the IT project was going on like a train. the first thing we asked ourselves was, is this going on? Are we still releasing in June? It's not possible. And the IT project manager told us, we're going for it. This release is going to happen. So you better make sure you're there. And we are a separate project, very close to the IT project, but we manage the people side of the change on our own. And we have our own dedicated resources. And it makes a world of difference because in the past, we had to use people that were also working on the IT project. They were involved in testing. They were involved in defining requirements. And although they had the right knowledge to also handle the people side of the change, they simply did not have the time to do it because at a certain moment, all things come together. You are testing the last phases of the IT project and already on your way to giving trainings, and when all these things overlap, it's not effective if it are the same people doing these things. I hope that's an answer to his question.
It is. Thank you very much.
Well, the last lesson learned we had is that we skipped the hopes and fears sessions for our independent agents, and we noticed that frustrations have a way of coming out, and we planned deep dive sessions to go a little bit further into their knowledge questions, but actually during those sessions the frustrations with the tool came out, and we were totally okay with it. We just said on the spot, okay, they need to get things out, then let them get things out. At least it's here and not in front of our clients. And at that moment, we switched from providing knowledge to just sincerely listening to their frustrations. But on the other hand, my entire ADKAR process a little bit upside down because it becomes a much slower process. And that's why we are at the moment still trying to get advanced knowledge towards our agents, because they were in the very first days and weeks, they were still in this phase of, I do not like this change. Why did you change the way I worked before? It was much easier for me. So the digital experience learned us that emotions come through in a slower way, and that it's quite challenging to find a format where people can ventilate frustrations, and we are still struggling with that. So that was it from me. I hope maybe there are still some questions. I hope it was an interesting experience to change. For us, it was actually a very, very good experience to progress on.
There's a question from Margaret. What is Plan B?
Mm-hmm.
It's a funny. What is Plan B?
Plan B on.
I think it's just the to handle this last resistance. How do you handle the last resistance in the war?
Well, we keep working on a project until it's done. So we still have sessions planned in September. We still do not know if they can take place physically or digitally, but there are knowledge sessions. If it appears that there is still resistance there, then we can cover it there. We are very lucky that in this project there's a second phase where we're going towards the customer. So in December, we release something towards the customer, and that provides us with an opportunity to still organize an event where they can see each other face to face. But we already know this event will be something totally different than all the events we knew before. So our event manager is really looking into this. How can we bring people together in a safe environment, that we do not transfer viruses to each other, but can still talk with each other face to face. And I still believe that face to face can have added value and is necessary to cover emotions. But we keep being there for everybody in the front line, because now the frustration is coming out in the phone calls with the contact center, in the emails to the contact center, and we do our best in supporting those people.
This is also what we see, change management and trying to impose digital on people. That doesn't work if you don't take care of the human aspect. It's always this that is the most important, to have people accepting something. And the second thing is what we also see is make it as simple as possible. If people find it difficult, they will not do it. But if it's, I always see three things. In fact, I see that if you make something easy, you explain the why, and you also give some emotional context with it, then most of the people will embrace it. What we see, for instance, in our programs, is that if you ask, where before, what I was speaking about, where before you had 1% of people doing something, if you create the right environment with the why should you do this? Why is it important for you? And why is it important for the company? And then the second thing, again, you make it simple. We, even in big companies, we go to 40, 50, 60% of the people that embrace the change and the new methodology. You will never have the 100% anyhow. That's a fairy tale, or except if you're a very small company and you impose it. But this is effectively what we see.
Yeah. For us, it's we noticed that people need rituals, and this credit day in history was the ritual people had to transfer from one situation to another. And apparently, as true Belgian people, we needed food and drinks to have this rite of passage to a new situation. And we feel that there's still a need for that. So we want to brainstorm during the summer how we can cover that. So all ideas on that are very welcome.
So is there anything else, anybody else that has questions? I think we can still wait for a couple of minutes, and otherwise, yeah. Yeah, the gracias.
Margarita, food and drinks always work.
Specifically in Belgium, by the way.
Yeah.
So I would say if there's no other questions, I think you can find us on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to give more insights. And Kirsten, I suppose from your end, just the same.
Yeah. And I do not know if there are people planning to come to the conference in September. Let's cross our fingers it can take place. But we will be there as well. If AXA finds it safe that we travel to Netherlands.
So I would say thank you very much, everybody, for attending these two sessions. And thank you very much, Kirsten, also for sharing your insights.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.